Hey everyone, my name is Britt. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to one of my favorite videos. It is my best books of 2022. 2022 has been a really great reading year. I have read so many amazing books, so I can't wait to talk about my 10 favorite books of the year. I am not going to go in any particular order, however I am going to end with my favorite book that I read this year, so definitely stay tuned until the end of the video. But what is also very exciting is that this video is in collaboration with Besmo, and if you don't know Besmo, they are a very brilliant reading tracking app where you can track your reading. You can start reading sessions, you can set reading goals. It's super easy to annotate and like take notes of your books. So many fun different features in this app that I will talk to you about throughout this video when I'm showing you different books. So if you're interested in checking out Besmo, I will leave a link down below in the description and I will tell you a little bit more about all of the features throughout the video. So without further ado, let's now get into my favorite books of the year because I've talked way too much already. Let's go. The first one is one of my new favorite non-fiction books. It's Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This is a book that I needed this year. So basically this is a non-fiction memoir written by Dolly Alderton, who is a 30-something woman. And this is all about her life in her 20s with friends, love, relationships, partying, work, sex, drugs, all of these type of things. She's talking about that in this book. The reason I love this book so much is because it felt so incredibly relatable. There were so many things in this book where I was just like, girl, same. And it kind of made me feel like not alone in certain thoughts I was having about like love or relationships or friends. And I just absolutely fell in love with Dolly Alderton and her writing and the way that she is so open and honest about all of that. So I recommend this book to everyone. And I remember seeing in the Besmo app that I wrote like, damn, Dolly just spoke about so many things I'm dealing with right now, so relatable. Because while you're reading the book, you can just put in notes or quotes that you saw in the book to help you remember and to, you know, get your thoughts out on paper whilst reading so you won't forget. The next one is Boys Don't Cry, written by Fiona Scarlett. I bought this one on a whim. I didn't know anything about it and boy, was this book amazing. On the back it says, they say boys don't cry, but Finn's seen his dad do it when he thinks no one's looking, so that's not true. And isn't it okay to be sad when bad things happen? They say boys don't cry, but you might. This is about two brothers whose father is dealing with a lot of stuff in his life right now, and the place where the boys live is quite an unsafe place. You know, there's lots of violence and they have to navigate their lives in this very, you know, unreliable place. And this one was so incredibly tragic and sad and beautiful because you also felt so much love, you know, for these characters and through these characters. And I was just blown away by this book because I did not know what to expect, but I felt so many emotions and it was just, as I said, incredibly emotional and beautiful at the same time. Highly recommend it. It's also really short. This was a very good one. I love these type of books that I pick up not really knowing much about it and then they turn out to be one of my favorites. The same happened with Orbiting Jupiter. I did see a couple of things about this book when I bought it, and I will read you from the back. It says, when Jack meets his new foster brother, he already knows 3 things about him. Joseph almost killed a teacher. He was incarcerated at a place called Stone Mountain, and he has a daughter. Her name is Jupiter, and he has never seen her. As you can probably imagine, this is also going to be very emotional, but what is so beautiful about this book is that it really is about how important it is to take care of each other and to have each other's back. There were also a couple of quotes that I wrote down whilst reading this book. First of all, it's not the solution, Mr. Carton, it's the path to the solution. That's fascinating. I thought it was a very interesting one. As well as, sometimes it's like that. You know something good is coming, and even though it's not even close yet, still, just knowing it's coming is enough to make you snort and nicker, sort of. I don't know, I just like that one. This is one of the best young adult books I've ever read. It was so good. And I don't know why it's so, like, unknown on BookTube. Definitely recommend this. Obviously, I recommend all of these books I'm talking about. I am, by the way, looking at all of these books in my 2022 favorites list that I made on Besmo. It's super easy to add books to different bookshelves and, you know, kind of create collections, so it's easy for you to keep track of all the books that you read or your favorites of the year or the books you want to read. It's super easy to add. You just find a book, press add to collection, voila. The next one is a very, very popular one this year, A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This one was a ride, and if you don't like gory books, do not pick up this one. This is about a food writer called Dorothy, and she likes to date lots of men, and sometimes after dating these men, she likes to murder them. This was so disturbing the more I think about it, but it was so interesting getting into the mind of this woman and like how twisted her thoughts are and where these thoughts are coming from. And that is what really attracts me to these type of books. Writers that are able to write these very like psychopathic characters and, you know, really get deep into the head of these characters. So that is why this one was so good, and I totally understand the hype. Also the cover, I'm obsessed. There are 3 non-fiction books in this pile, and this is the second one. It is Letters to a Young Poet, written by Rilke. And Rilke was a completely new author to me. I've never read any of his work before, but I saw this one around everywhere because it is so popular, and I decided to pick it up. So basically, this is all these type of letters that Rilke wrote to an officer cadet. In these letters, he is giving this young officer cadet advice about love, work, living, all these things, you know, that we're all dealing with in life, and he's giving his thoughts and ideas on how to get the most out of it and how to overcome certain challenges and, you know, live life to the fullest. These letters were so incredibly like inspiring and influential, I think, for so many people, and I underlined so much in this book as well as wrote down notes in the Besmo app. What's really fun is that, for example, you can take a photo of a page and the page will scan, you know, all of the words that are on that, and then you can create quotes that you, it's nearly falling, and you can like create and design these quotes that you can post on your social media if you want to, or share with your friends. And of course you can also just, you know, highlight the text that you want to remember for when you want to get back to this book. There was this one quote that I thought was really beautiful. It says, "Don't be too quick to draw conclusions from what happens to you. Simply let it happen." And let's see if there's another one. "Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love." So many things that I think about. And then another one. "Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer." Like, come on, this guy can write and like come up with so many interesting things and theories to think about, which is why I absolutely fell in love with this book, and I'm now recommending it to everyone. Okay, I will just talk about another non-fiction book. This is my new, like one of my new favorite Dutch books ever, and I'm so glad I read it. It is De meeste mensen deugen by Rutger Bregman. And this one has also been translated in English, which I'm so happy about. In English, it is called Humankind. And this is a massive non-fiction book. I listened to this on audiobook, by the way, which was amazing. But this is a really, really big non-fiction book all about, it says like a new history of humankind. And basically, Rutger is trying to explain and investigate and explore human behavior, and how he is trying to kind of prove that much of human behavior that you see everywhere online, or just like in experiments, or of course in real life, comes from the goodness of humans and not out of selfishness that we often read about, like, oh, humans are just selfish, you know. However, he's trying to kind of debunk this idea, and he went even further in many experiments that have been done throughout the years to come to the conclusion that humans are essentially good. And this was an incredibly heartwarming and like positive and inspiring book, and it made me feel very hopeful, and that is why I love this book so much. You just have to read it. Honestly, I don't really want to tell you about any of the experiments because then I can kind of spoil it, but it's more interesting if you read it yourself and, you know, learn about the outcomes whilst reading it. So in English it is called Humankind. Absolutely amazing. The next one is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, written by Ocean Vuong. This was such a beautiful, beautiful book. It is written by a son in the form of a letter to his illiterate mother. And the writer of the letter, he is called Little Dog. He is in his late 20s, and he's basically unraveling and exploring his family's history. Much of his family's history is rooted in Vietnam because he is Vietnamese American. So it really goes back a lot to his family in Vietnam and everything that they've been through. This honestly felt like reading one big poem. It was so beautiful and captivating, and it kind of felt like you were flowing through the book sometimes. It was just an incredibly beautiful experience reading this book. Highly recommend this, obviously. Wait, I was wrong. There is one more non-fiction book. It is I Am Glad My Mum Died, written by Jeanette McCurdy, which is a memoir written by, as you've probably known, Jeanette McCurdy, who played in the Nickelodeon series iCarly, and it's about her life as being a teenage star, like a child star. Everything that she's been through with her mother, who has now passed away. She passed away from cancer, who was a very big factor in her traumatic growing up being a child star, because her mum was one of the main reasons she developed an eating disorder. Very inappropriate behavior coming from her mother, and in this book she is talking all about her mum when she was younger, and you know, her being a child star, but also everything that happened at Nickelodeon and at the Nickelodeon studios, and how many people there were also not acting in a proper way. I listened to this on audiobook. She narrated it herself, and it was so incredibly like painful to read, like, and to listen to, because she is narrating it herself. You could feel her emotions through, you know, the book, and the way that you could hear her getting emotional reading about certain parts of her life. She, I think, is so brave for opening up and telling her story. Definitely read some trigger warnings before listening or reading this book, because it is definitely not a fun read, but I think so very important that she's so open and honest about this. Okay, two more books to talk about. The next one is Hamnet, written by Maggie O'Farrell. This takes place in 1596. I'll quickly read you something from back. It says, a young girl takes to bed with a sudden fever, and her twin brother Hamnet reaches everywhere for help. Why is nobody at home? And then their mother Agnes is over a mile away in the garden where she grows medicinal herbs. Their father is working in London. Neither parent knows that Hamnet will not survive the week. This is actually inspired by the son of, you know, Shakespeare, and I didn't really know what to expect while reading this book, but damn, this was some amazing writing, and Agnes was such a beautiful character to read about, and you could just, I don't know, I immediately felt so much love for her. You know, sometimes you just have that with these type of characters, and with Agnes it was definitely the case. This was really, really beautiful, emotional, super well written. I felt so immersed into the story. So this was one of those books where you were just so pleasantly surprised by how into this book I was, and I loved it very much. So beautiful, so glad I read it. This was also the Women's Prize for Fiction winner in 2020. And then the final book in this list, which was also the first book I finished this year, and my favorite, is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. If you've been watching my videos this year, you will know that I've talked about this book so many times before, because it's still my favorite of the year. And what I love is that I picked up this book solely based on the cover, because I thought this cover looks really cool. I'm loving the vibe with these guys with the cigarette, the kind of like rebellious look the cover gives, and boy, was I surprised and amazed by this book. It is super, super short, and in this book that takes place in the 1960s, you follow these two kind of rival gangs of youngsters who are constantly just fighting each other, you know, not getting along at school. And in one of these gangs, you have a few of the characters that we focus on the most. One of them is Ponyboy, and you follow Ponyboy through his life being in this one gang called the Greasers, who are the poorer of the two. You have the Greasers and the Socks. But what I absolutely loved about this book is that kind of the premise of this story is that as a human, you find out the more you get to know different human beings around you who may look different than you, or who you think are different from you, but the more you talk and get to know other people, the more you find out that we are all just one, you know, on the inside we're all the same. And I think that is such a beautiful message that I got from this book. Also so emotional, so inspiring, and there was this one quote that I of course also had to highlight. It is, "We all see the same sunset," and I just love that quote so much. There were definitely some more notes that I put with this book. First of all, just absolutely perfect, and then it seemed funny to me that the sunset she saw from her patio and the one I saw from the back steps were the same one. Maybe the two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset. And then also, stay gold, Ponyboy, stay gold. Oh my god, I cried so much. First book I read in 2022 and already a new favorite. And then the last one, you still have a lot of time to make yourself be what you want. There's still lots of good in the world. Tell Daddy, I don't think he knows. Oh my god, I love this book so much. I just still love that. It is the first book I read this year and still my favorite one. So these were all of my favorite books of 2022. I loved using Vesmo to, you know, track all of my reading, set these reading goals, create all of these collections of the books I read in 2022 favorites, books I want to read next year. And if you want to download Vesmo for yourself, definitely check out the link in my description. I really hope you like this video. Please let me know in the comments some of your favorite books that you read this year. If you want to comment something but you don't know what to comment a star emoji, because it's like stay gold pony boy, stay gold, and stars are gold. So comment a star emoji. Thank you again so much for watching. I really hope you're having a beautiful day, and I will see you in my next video.